What's going on, y'all? This is John Alsace with Facemask Fantasy. We got new up-to-date fantasy content coming your way every day on this channel, so if you have not subscribed already, then please hit that button. But before we get into our main topic for today, my co-host Nick Payne put in a ton of work to give you guys a free 2021 Redraft draft kit available on our website, which can be found at facemaskpod.com. It's a great piece of content, something that other analysts might be charging you for, but we're giving it to you for free. So without further ado, let's get into some fantasy talk, and today we're going to talk about Tony Jones Jr. Now, in the Saints' first preseason game, Tony Jones Jr. burst onto the scene rushing for 82 yards and a touchdown off of just 7 carries, while also hauling in 5 catches for 38 yards. Now, we all know that Alvin Kamara is the starter for the New Orleans Saints, with Latavius Murray the backup, and Devonta Freeman was signed as the third-string running back this past offseason. But with such a strong showing from Tony Jones Jr., we have to wonder if he has a shot to upset this running back depth chart if he continues to show the same promise that he showed in the first preseason game. Now, if you're like me and was watching that Saints game, you came away from that game wondering, all right, who the hell is this Tony Jones Jr. guy? He looked pretty decent. Now, he was signed as an undrafted free agent after the draft last year in 2020 to the Saints, and while Jones failed to make the Saints' 53-man roster as a UDFA, he landed on the practice squad as the only running back on the Saints practice squad to begin the season in 2020. To go back even further in the history to give you a little bit more context, Jones was a 4-star recruit out of high school, ultimately posting a line of 271 rushes for 1,481 yards and 12 touchdowns, while also contributing 27 catches for 273 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air. He averaged 5.5 yards per carry during his college career, regularly running through contact instead of juking or using shiftiness to win. Now, he only ran a 4.68 second 40-yard dash, a time which isn't typically viewed as one that will translate to long-term NFL success. But he showed enough in camp in 2020 to be signed to the practice squad, and he showed enough while on the practice squad for the Saints in 2020 to be elevated on January 2nd of 2021 when fellow running backs Alvin Kamara, Latavius Murray, and Dwayne Washington were all out for game day action due to COVID-19 protocols. Now, Jones was the primary backup behind Ty Montgomery for the Saints game against the Panthers in Week 17 that year. In the game, he didn't do much as he only logged 5 snaps, which translated to 13 yards on 3 carries, while Ty Montgomery led the backfield with 44 snaps and recorded 19 touches. And so he largely played meaningless snaps in a meaningless Week 17 game, and then ultimately he was reverted back to the Saints practice squad the following Monday once the starters came back from COVID protocols. But he did sign a reserve futures contract with the team after the season, and this depth chart ahead of him is a little long in the tooth. Now, Latavius Murray is 31 years old, and Devonta Freeman, while only 29 himself, it feels like he's been in the league as almost as long as Frank Gore and Adrian Peterson at this point. And neither back in Latavius Murray or Devonta Freeman has been more than an injury fill-in at best for the last few seasons. Now, Kamara's role set in stone. He's signed through 2025, and he carries a $20 million dead cap figure until after the 2022 season. So his role as a starter is safe for the time being and not expected to change anytime soon as the offense's primary weapon going forward. Lat, I believe, will stick around through the end of his contract, which will put him in position to play through the 2022 season. And I might add that Latavius Murray and Alvin Kamara are the only 2 running backs signed past the 2021 season. Every other running back on this roster is on a 1-year deal. Now, this team rostered 4 running backs last year in Kamara, Latavius, Dwayne Washington, and Ty Montgomery. I believe Tony Jones Jr. is fighting for Ty Montgomery's spot. Dwayne Washington profiles more as a 1-to-1 replacement for Latavius Murray, and Ty Montgomery and Tony Jones both serve the same function as potential injury replacements for Kamara's role in the Saints offense should Kamara miss time. Now, the Ty Montgomery role as a standalone role is not fantasy relevant. You're really counting on not even 1 but 2 injuries for him to even be somebody that you would think about putting into your lineup. And there's a chance that Ty Montgomery makes the team ahead of Tony Jones Jr. There's a chance that Tony Jones Jr. doesn't even make this team in his second year and is once again practice squad bound. Now, needless to say, I'm not looking at somebody who's fighting for Ty Montgomery's spot on the Saints offense as the third or fourth running back in the rotation to be somebody that I want to invest in fantasy. The only format in which a guy like Tony Jones Jr. is even a talking point is in dynasty leagues. And unless you want a player with the ceiling of a Ty Montgomery, I'd leave him be. This is the preseason we're talking about here, where borderline NFL talent is playing against other borderline NFL talents in situations where the team is basically experimenting with their offense. Sometimes when I'm watching the preseason, I need to remind myself that I'm just watching the preseason and not to go crazy or go gaga over any of these guys. And this is just a reminder to anybody who's listening to do the same. Don't be blowing a ton of fab on a guy like Tony Jones Jr. I don't even think this guy's really even a watch list type player. With the low level of athleticism that he brings to the position, and the fact that he's fighting for a roster spot with a backup to a backup to a backup. Now, I am all out on him from a fantasy perspective, but I want to know what you guys think. Do you guys believe, like me, that this guy is just fighting for a depth role on this offense that will not lead to really any fantasy production unless 2 to 3 running backs in front of him get injured, like was the case week 17 last season? Put your thoughts in the comment section below. My name is John Alsace, and this is Facemask Fantasy. We bring you new up-to-date fantasy content every day right here on this channel, so if you have not hit the subscribe button, please do. Thank you for listening and have a great day.